Like many cities around the country, Boston's a target for new kinds of dockless transportation, meaning bikes and scooters. It also needs an upgrade of its infrastructure for wireless technology. Both concerns will be getting some attention from the Boston City Council. Thanks to the efforts of our guest, we'd like to welcome the Councilor for Jamaica Plain and West Roxbury, Matt O'Malley. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
Always great to be with you, Chris.
I want to start with the bikes and the scooters. We see some of them around the city, and I guess why not let them just roll in?
Well, I think we should let them roll in, but we should let them roll in with some rules and regulations going forward. I'm a big proponent of the innovation technology. I actually think having electric scooters is a really exciting thing. I think it will both help deal with the traffic congestion, which in my opinion has never been as bad as it is now in the city, as well as the fact that there are so many greenhouse gas emissions that come from traditional automobiles. These are electric scooters. They would help with congestion. They'd help with greenhouse gas emissions. But whereas so many other cities have basically thrown their hands up in the air and outright banned these things, I'm saying let's have a conversation, let's bring in the relevant stakeholders, let's work together to find a way that we can coexist and put some rules and regulations in place so that they're able to thrive. But I think it's a very exciting business model, and I think it's something that we ought to be celebrating rather than just instinctively banning it.
Well, with dockless bikes, the advantage is you don't have to go looking for a dock. I guess the problem is it might just sit there like an abandoned shopping cart.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's two different things we're talking about. With the city about 10 years ago began with what was Hubway. It's now called Blue Bikes. They are the docked bike stations. I'm delighted to report that later this month, Roslindale/West Rocks will be getting its first Blue Bike station, and I'll be out there and I'll be using it. With the dockless bikes, they can be left out, and we actually have an exclusivity contract with Blue Bikes, so we're talking more about the electric scooters. Now they will be left out. They don't need a station to be returned to, and this is a very good thing because it would allow a reach into more neighborhoods, particularly far-flung neighborhoods that may not have access to rapid transit. I'm talking specifically about Hyde Park, West Roxbury, Roslindale, and Mattapan. This would allow better communication transportation to these MBTA hubs, as we've seen in Malden, which has used this model very, very successfully. The other thing is, because they're electric, they're picked up at night where they're charged, so they're not going to be seen as littering the sidewalks the way some other things, or the way some opponents of this have talked about. It's actually a very, very smart business model and can help move people, and it's also good for the environment.
Now, I imagine a lot of the scooters, at least, are probably going to be on the sidewalks.
That is true. That's precisely where they would be. I think by having this hearing, we can have some rules and regulations where they will be. Sidewalks are for people. Scooters are for moving people. So I think it's not an either or proposition here. I think that we can coexist well, but we need to have some rules and regs in place. And I think that I've sat with two of the different companies that have been operating in different cities around the country. My door is open to everybody. At our hearing, we're going to make sure that every business has an opportunity to meet with the relevant stakeholders and talk about what they do. But certainly we want those rules and regulations in place. I'll say in closing, as it relates to this, another thing that we can be talking about is profit sharing, which many of these companies do. So this is something that we could have a terrific and a successful public-private partnership that helps deal with congestion, is good for the environment, and generates some revenue for the city of Boston. That money can then be put directly into better infrastructure for our bike lanes, better transportation costs, or address transportation costs, and it's an exciting venture.
This has been the news, and we're talking with Boston City Councilor from District 6, Matt O'Malley. Councilor, another kind of congestion you worry about is, I guess, data on mobile phones and in laptops.
Sure.
The infrastructure, I guess, is going to be upgraded. So where does the City Council come in for this?
Well, the Council is going to hopefully help get the infrastructure addressed, because right now we are lagging behind significantly, and the problem is only going to get worse. You may have noticed, Chris, I certainly have noticed, I'm sure many of your viewers have noticed, the number of dropped calls has increased in the city of Boston within the last year, and that is because we have more and more people. We've seen nearly 11% growth in population over the last 8 years, and we're seeing more and more devices. It's not just your smartphone anymore. It could be a watch, it could be a wearable, it could be a health device that uses data to communicate in the exchange of data to talk to one another. And what we're seeing is a very old, antiquated system. It used to be those 30 or 40-foot high cell phone towers that are on top of buildings. We're talking now is a very, very small node that can be used to help communicate and help share information. This is something that we have fallen very, very behind on building that infrastructure. we can barely support what's known as the 4G network. Other cities are going to 5G at the end of this calendar year. Many will be on by 2020, which is less than 2 years out from now. We couldn't even begin to support that. Moreover, when you have large-scale events like a Red Sox game, like I'll be at the Dominican Parade in Jamaica Plain on Sunday, the July 4th down at the Esplanade, when you have these huge events, you're seeing too much stress on the system, and it's making it so much harder to be able to communicate. That's a real issue. It's a public safety issue as well. So what the council can do is work with all of these private companies, again, this is a public-private partnership, to help rebuild the infrastructure, to make it work better, and to help with communication. It's good for all citizens, it's good for tourists, it's good for businesses, it's good for public safety, and it's something that we really need to address, because we're going to, every day that passes, we're going to continue to fall behind.
Well, as you said, this is supposed to be a partnership. The city doesn't pay for everything itself. What about other cities? What kind of deals are they getting with?
I think it's more about expediting the permitting process. We have a very cumbersome process right now. I'm hopeful that one byproduct of this hearing, which will be likely held in the next month or two, we can make it easier for these companies. We can have better coordination, much as I tried to do with the gas leaks bill a couple of years ago, to have better coordination between the private and public utilities. Have the same thing, because I would argue that, you know, these nodes are a public utility as well. The information superhighway has become a public utility that we need to really invest in. So I think the City Council can help coordinate the permitting process, can help coordinate the construction process, and can also make sure that it's done equitable and in every neighborhood. We don't want to make it harder for certain neighborhoods than others to take advantage of an increase in our infrastructure as it relates to data sharing.
Speaking of the gas leaks bill, the gas companies, I don't think they like it.
Well, I would say that maybe some of the National Grid certainly does not like it and sued us, and unfortunately we're successful in their court case. The rank and file gas workers, I think, like it because it showed a commitment through our ordinance to make sure that these leaks, these 3,000 plus leaks throughout the city of Boston, some of which are decades old, that's not an exaggeration, there was one that was over 30 years old, are fixed by quality and competent men and women who know how to address this. And it's further exacerbated by the fact that Grid has locked out its employees. It's not a strike, as some people would have you believe. This is a deliberate lockout by National Grid, so we don't have that same level of professionals out there addressing these leaks. And it's something that I'm very, very concerned about. My colleagues on the council, the mayor I know, share this concern, and we're going to continue to address it to both fix the leaks and support these National Grid workers who should be allowed to serve our city by doing their job.
Well, you're also concerned about the workers. They have been locked out since around June 25th. They wanted to work under the terms of the old contract, and the National Grid said no. Yeah,
it is shameful the way the executives at National Grid have acted towards their employees through this process. You have individuals who no longer have access to health care. There could be, I don't know personally, but I know I've read, and I know many of the workers personally who have colleagues who are accruing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of medical bills because of a child who may be sick, who may have a pre-existing condition, and now has no access to health care. It's shameful, and I'm proud to stand. Councillor Ed Flynn and I authored a resolution that was signed on by every councillor and passed at the last council meeting in support of these workers, and I just hope National Grid changes their greedy behavior and is able to work with these folks. Again, it's a public safety issue.
And you say greedy, why exactly?
I think because they've been unwilling to work with the folks from the USW to address some of the issues around the pensions, to healthcare certainly. We want to make sure that there's an opportunity for the union to collectively bargain. That has not happened. Again, this is not a strike, this is a lockout. And I think profits have been put over having a strong and robust workforce, and that's unconscionable in my opinion.
But from the council I've read, the contract offered to these workers from National Grid, it looks like a pretty draconian deal, didn't it?
You're talking that was offered by Grid?
By National Grid.
Yeah, I think it got rid of health care for many. It dealt with significant cuts to pension benefits that had been promised, some unfulfilled promises. So I would agree with you. I think it hasn't been fair, and I think I know the men and women with whom I've spoken who are currently locked out are looking forward to getting back to work and to find some common ground. And it's just it's disappointing that we're now, nearly 2 months into this, and it's going to continue, it seems, for several weeks to come.
You're also concerned about National Grid outsourcing more of its work to subcontractors. Why is that a problem for anybody in addition to the workers?
Because again, I think you want to make sure that we have the best qualified individuals. There was an issue where you had someone who wasn't a union member was brought in to address a leak, and it was exacerbated. Now, I know this is human error. I'm not zeroing in on this one individual, but I think it belies the fact that the men and women who currently work for USW and have been dealing with these gas leaks for many, many years and other parts of the job are the best qualified, know the streets, know the infrastructure, know what needs to be focused on. So to bring in outsiders to do that, you are sacrificing some institutional knowledge about the city, about the way these things work, and it's not only a public health issue, it's a public safety issue, and it's an economic justice issue as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Great to be with you.
City Councilor Matt O'Malley will have more news in just a moment.